Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to Arbitrary 20. In this video, we're going to be making a skill monkey character built around the reliable talent feature from Rogue. I'll explain more later, but for those who don't know, a skill monkey is a character that gets proficiency in every skill in the game, and potentially some additional bonuses on top of that, like expertise as well. This build won't get proficiency in all skills as soon as possible. You can technically do it by like level 7 or 8. It'll be a little bit later than that for this build because I still want it to have decent damage, but it will definitely have the majority of skills covered early on. And with that said, we'll go ahead and move on to the race. We're going to be going with Vidalkin. There's plenty of races that give you 1 to 2 skill proficiencies, and any of them would work, but I like Vidalkin the best since it gives you a skill proficiency and an additional d4 added to the roll whenever you use that skill. And this ability is actually pretty good because it stacks with whatever additional bonuses you throw on top of it as well. It can stack with guidance, it can stack with advantage, it can stack with expertise, and so on. And then on to background, which I have actually been cutting out of the majority of my builds, but for this one we're going for skill proficiencies, and backgrounds give you 2 of them. What background you go doesn't really matter a whole lot, just make sure you don't pick the 2 skills you get from this again from one of your class features. And for our ability scores, assuming point buy, we'll have a strength of 11, plus 1 from our race for a total of 12, a dexterity of 14, plus 2 from our race for a total of 16, a constitution of 10, an intelligence of 13, a wisdom of 13, and a charisma of 13 as well. And then if you're rolling for your ability scores, I would prioritize dexterity first, wisdom and charisma second for both multi-classing and skills, and then third I would prioritize intelligence. It's good for skills, but we don't need it for any multi-classing. And then for our ideal equipment, we'll need a hand crossbow, half plate armor, thieves tools, and then whatever additional tools you take proficiency with as well. And with all of that said, we'll be moving on to level 1. We're going to be starting off as a rogue. From rogue we get 4 starting skill proficiencies, that's bringing us to a total of 7. And then we'll get sneak attack, which will be one of our main sources of damage for this build. If we have advantage or an ally is next to the enemy, we deal an additional d6 damage, and that increases by a d6 every odd level of rogue. Again, damage isn't the build's main focus, but I want it to be able to do okay damage when it needs to. And then we'll get expertise. You can pick whichever 2 skills you'd like, but I'd recommend focusing on skills you think you'll be using a lot to get the maximum value out of the expertise, and this goes for the first 7 skills you're choosing as well. Try to focus on the more common skills first, and then the more niche skills later on into the build. And we'll get 2 more choices of expertise at level 6 in rogue. And then on to level 2, we'll be taking 1 level of Cleric. For spells, the only one we really need for this build is Guidance. This is one of the main reasons we're taking this Cleric dip. This will be an additional d4 to the majority of our skill checks. And multi-classing into Cleric also gets us medium armor proficiency, which is something we really want to pick up early with how low our constitution is. For our Divine Domain, we're going to be going with the Knowledge Domain. We get proficiency and expertise with 2 additional skills here. Our options aren't the most commonly used skills, but it does bring us closer to our goal, and we are now at 9 total skill proficiencies. And then on to levels 3 through 12, we're going to be taking the rest of our rogue levels, going all the way up to rogue 11. First we'll get Cunning Action, which will just be a nice utility feature to have in combat. If you took expertise in stealth, you'll almost always succeed those bonus action hide checks. And then for our roguish archetype, I think there's 3 good options here: Inquisitive, Phantom, or Soul Knife. Inquisitive gives you sort of a mini reliable talent for insight at level 3, as well as advantage on perception and investigation checks. It also lets you make an ability check to use your sneak attack, which is great on a character like this, which is focusing more on skills than damage. And then Phantom does give some nice damage and defensive benefits with Wails of the Grave and Tokens of the Departed, but I think the main reason it could be a good pick for this build is the Whispers of the Dead feature. We are going to be able to get proficiency in every skill, but definitely not every tool. With an ability like this, you can temporarily become proficient with any tool, which effectively gives you proficiency with all tools if you have enough time. If you don't want to go with this subclass and you still want something like that, you could get a similar ability by taking a 2nd level of Knowledge Cleric and getting its Channel Divinity, Knowledge of the Ages. And then if you just want to have the highest skill checks possible, Soul Knife is probably the way to go. With the Psi Bolstered Knack feature, we can add our Psionic Energy die, which is eventually a d10, to any of our ability checks that use a skill or tool that we're proficient with, and eventually we're going to be proficient with every skill. And then back to base rogue features, we'll get Uncanny Dodge and Evasion, which are both great defensive boosts that are very welcome with our constitution of 10. And then we'll get 3 ability score increases or feats during this time in rogue. First off, we'll take Skilled to get 3 more skill proficiencies, bringing us to a total of 12. And then for the next 2 feats, we'll take Crossbow Expert and Sharpshooter just to help us keep up in terms of damage. And then last but certainly not least, at level 11 in rogue, we'll get Reliable Reliable talent. This makes it so we can't roll lower than a 10 for any skill we're proficient with, and by the end of the build we're going to have at least a +8 to all of our skills, so the minimum we can roll on even our worst skills is going to be an 18. And then moving on to levels 13 through 16, we're going to be taking 4 levels of Bard. First off, we'll get 1 skill proficiency just for multiclassing into Bard, bringing us to a total of 13. And then for spells, the only one that can help with our skills is Enhance Ability. Other than that, you can take whichever spells you'd like. And then we'll get Bardic Inspiration. This lets you use a bonus action to give an ally a d6 they can add to any of their d20 rolls within the next 10 minutes. And then next we'll get Jack of all Trades. Usually this is a very strong feature on a Bard, but for this build it's not going to be doing a whole lot. It's only going to be boosting our initiative by the end. And then we'll get Expertise from Bard, which is pretty much the same as it is from Rogue. Once again, just try to choose skills that you find yourself using often. And now at level 15, you'll probably have a much better sense of what skills to pick than you did at level 1 or 6 for your campaign. And then for our Bard College, we're going to be going with College of Lore. We'll get our 3 bonus proficiencies, bringing us to a total of 16 skill proficiencies. And then we'll get Cutting Words. You can use a reaction to subtract your Bardic Inspiration die from an enemy's attack roll, ability check, or damage roll. And then lastly from Bard, we're going to get another ability score increase or feat, and we're going to go with Skill Expert, taking a +1 to Wisdom. This gives us an additional skill proficiency, bringing us to 17 total, and we get an additional expertise as well. And then for our last 4 levels, levels 17 through 20, we're going to take 4 levels of Ranger. Just like Bard, we get 1 skill proficiency for multiclassing into Ranger, and this will be our last one, bringing us to a total of 18, and that is every skill in the game. And then I did want to mention Deft Explorer as well. It's an optional feature from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, and it can get us 1 additional expertise. And then for our fighting style, we're going to go with Archery, just to increase our damage with our crossbow. And then for spells, there's none that are really important to the build, so you can pick whichever ones you'd like. And then for the Ranger Conclave, I would probably go with Beastmaster or Drake Warden, since the companion can potentially help you with ability checks and gives you advantage, but any subclass that increases damage like the Hunter or the Fey Wanderer would work great as well. And then for our last ability score increase, we're just going to be taking a +1 to Intelligence and a +1 to Charisma to bring them both to 14. And that's all I have for the build. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you'd like to check out my last build, I called it the Shadow Ninja. It's sort of a stealth assassin build that tries to do a lot of damage on the first round of combat. If that sounds interesting, you can check it out right here. Either way, thank you guys for watching. Hope you have an awesome rest of your day, and we'll see you in the next one.